Alright, I hope this works. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start the stream now. Alright, hi everyone. Good morning. It's been a very scuffed morning. There's been a lot of things that didn't work out well, but we're finally here, we're alive. So I apologize for the scuffedness. If you see any problems that happen, I'm just still trying to work around with it. So just a heads up. There's gonna be some jankiness that happens on the stream, but we're trying our best to make it work out and whatnot. My friends, teacher friends are on the stream, so let me go ahead and get started here before I bring, well, the other teachers are on stage now on Discord, but they're waiting on standby, so thank goodness. Thank you guys for waiting. I see Susie and John are in the chat, so hello. And I see Hans in the YouTube chat. Hello. Good morning to you. Yeah, today's a very, very wild day. I see Honest typing in the chat. Okay. Sorry, it's just really hard. I wish I had like a third screen, then I could see everything. But yeah. Let me go ahead and present the view for you guys first. So, first I'd like to introduce you guys to the THC podcast, or the Homebody Cafe podcast with me, Professor Hana. I'm also gonna introduce like an idea of what is to expect in this podcast kind of format. So in the Homebody Cafe podcast, it's basically we talk about whatever subjects that you guys like. You can practice it in podcast style, so it's like an interview kind of approach, but you get to practice English informally with with multiple native speakers depending on who's in call. This is more centered for like students who want to practice English, and then of course we stream it on YouTube, and it's there for your record or reviewing later, or if you're asleep, it's there online so you can watch it, so you'll never miss it wherever you are in the world. So yeah, finally a podcast live class that can kickstart your morning or conclude a long busy day. Enjoy learning English with fun discussions and friends. So it's informal, you get to choose a topic if you join my Ko-Fi, and then also you can enjoy Lofi music, which hopefully you can hear at this time. Alright, so podcast objectives. Students will be able to listen and participate in authentic English conversation language in a natural setting, model phrases, vocabulary, and expressions from authentic conversations, recall, construct appropriate responses to given topics and questions, distinguish and identify the American English phonetic inventory or pronunciations. Next. So podcast expectations, so Professor Hana and guest speakers, if there's multiple, or if there are multiple, will propose the main topic of the podcast. Questions are provided by Professor Hana, who can become guest speakers, Ko-Fi subscribers. So if you go to ko-fi.com/homebodyteacher/tiers, it's usually the Nerve of Tungsten and Imperial Scholars. Those are who will be able to join the call and become a guest speaker. And when you become a Ko-Fi subscriber, I can talk to you about the questions, so you have time to think about what you want to say ahead of time, and then when the podcast happens, that's when you will answer the question. So who can listen? Homebodies via Discord, or anyone who has the YouTube link, so it's all there. Okay, so I think that's about it for the expectations. So this is our very first episode. We have the Homebody Cafe podcast featuring my good friend Norman and Anna. And let me go ahead and update this so you can see them now. Should be working now. Boom. Boom. Oh goodness. Okay, I will definitely work with this in a second. I hate that it's so janky, guys. I'm sorry. I have to close the live stream, the share screen output on Discord, because that's causing all of these things to shift, so I have to close the projector. I'm so sorry. This will fix it, hopefully. Because usually what I do is share my live stream and then it shows. Is that working? I apologize, guys. The scuffness is real. Alright. By the way, everyone can hear you now, Anna. Yeah. I'm gonna transition over, so now you should be able to see your faces, I think, in this stream. I gotta put faith here. This'll work. I apologize again. It's very, very, very scuffed. You're now on the stream. And I have to fix the video again. So, good morning, guys. How are you? How's your day? I see Anna's face. What's up? I can't hear you. Yeah, your video should be showing now. It should be on the Discord. It'd really be like that. Your picture. That's okay. It's alright with me. I just have to like edit the screen. Again, today's a very scuffed stream. I'm still trying to figure out how I could permanently leave like your images on here, because I think it should work. Hold on a second. I just wish I had more time to just deal with this in the background. But yeah, will this do? I don't know if your faces are showing, because I can only see things one at a time on my screen, so I don't have a second screen. This is so frustrating. Let me minimize this, and hopefully that works. Okay. Technically I would, but yeah, it's just bothersome because I have to see multiple screens, and if I can only open one app at a time, so it focuses on one thing. So it's okay. I apologize again for the scuffness of the stream. I'm doing the best I can. Alright. So I see Anna's icon as a Kirby on my screen. I see Norman's face, so I hope it's centered. If it's not, I apologize. I did the best I could. Also, will it help if okay, yeah, I'm just gonna do an output projector for you guys, so you can actually see what's happening in my screen. Because I was thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, it's not gonna show if I don't do that, so I'll just go ahead and do that. I apologize. So many apologies. Share screen. Projector output. Okay. And then I have to fix the stream in a second. Alright, so while I'm fixing everything, and I don't want to waste your guys' time, Norman and Anna, Norman, would you like to introduce yourself first? Nice. What do you do for your hobbies? Oh, nice, nice. What about you, Anna? Go ahead and introduce yourself. Girl, what about your hobbies? Girl, what you saying? You do a lot of interesting things. All right. So, what are your guys' experience when it comes to teaching? I'm curious, or let everyone know. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so sweet. I love that. You had really great teachers who were like really patient with you. What about you, Anna? Did you also have to go through ESL? I ready? I've never heard of that. I was only pulled out of class when I did ESL. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Perhaps. All right. So thank you guys for being patient. John said in the chat, scuffed. Don't be sorry, be better. I know. Next time. Next time. I don't know if you guys can see the share screen. So Norman and Anna, can you guys see this shared screen? Also, hopefully Susie and John can see it too. So I had to move your videos in the bottom. I will fix that on the next stream. So I expected this first stream is gonna be very scuffed. It's the first time and everything. So I'm gonna give myself grace. We're gonna go ahead and get started with our first question here, guys. So we are going to be talking about the bicultural experience. So Norman, let's get you to answer the first question. How do you define a bicultural upbringing? Like the milk cartons in the boxes, you said? That's your bicultural experience? Oh, that's true.
Interesting. I know my sister is one of those children that eat tomatoes. When she was young, we used to take her to the store, and instead of getting like candy or chips, she would get the tomatoes and just like eat them raw.
What?
Yeah, you know, Vale?
So she would eat them raw?
Yeah. She was the only weird one out of the bunch.
Oh, that's interesting.
Alright, that's kind of harsh.
It's because my dad would take us all to get like snacks,
Mm-hmm.
and we would get like chips, you know, your common snacks. And she would go to the tomato section or vegetable section.
I see. So she would go to the tomato section, she'd eat them raw. I don't know, because like I'm not the type of person who would eat just tomato raw by itself. I need it to be like with I need it to be like with something, because I can only eat tomato if it's like with Italian food or with like hamburgers. That's okay. I can deal with it. Also, I just wanted to let you guys know for the first half of the segment, YouTube did not catch your voice. I mean, I apologize. That's why I'm like doing everything frantically. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm the mod for myself. I'm editing the video myself. And thank God for Hans in the chat, because he's telling me, oh, I can't hear the guests or like the music. And he's like, now I can hear everyone. I'm like, I'm sorry. So to summarize, Norman's bicultural experience was the milk carton, right?
Well, the milk carton and the tomato, basically.
And tomato. Tomato was Anna's, right?
Oh no, I was just
I mean, she
bouncing
talked
off
about
of
that.
Norman.
Oh, okay. So I apologize. It was just like my brain was split for a moment. It's hard to run this. But yes. So tomato and milk carton for Norman. Just to give an idea, in the Philippines, you drink from a plastic, like literally plastic for drinks. It is what it is. But that was our container for our drinks in the Philippines. So coming to America and saying
Well,
like
not the container.
Like what?
Not the container.
No, not the
like,
plastic container. It's a plastic bag. That's what I was thinking. No?
No. It's actually a hardened plastic jug.
Oh, okay. I grew up from a different childhood from you then. My bad.
You left Philippines, you said, like when you were like 4 years old?
Yeah, I was 4. But like I remember the stuff that I did in the Philippines. Like we had plastic baggies. That's how we drank from our drinks. It was like those clear plastic ones, and then you just put water or whatever drink it is, and you drink from that, and that was it. You put a straw, and that's it. You've never had that experience?
Never had those.
Bruh. Okay, we had different childhoods. My bad. So, okay, Anna, it's your turn. So how do you define bicultural upbringing? I don't think we had you answer this yet.
Well, bicultural is like the mixing of two cultures.
Yes.
And upbringing is like how you were raised.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess for me, the two cultures I was mixing was my Mexican culture, which are from both parents are from Mexico. My mom's from Nayarit, and then my dad's from Michoacan. And then the American culture, which I was, I guess, pushed into when I was born here in the United States. I would say, to be honest, I didn't really sense a difference when I was younger. Mainly because I grew up in a Hispanic community, so everybody spoke Spanglish.
Spanglish.
So
right?
it's either you spoke Spanish, English, or both mixed, or like even like code switching. So I never felt out of place or like I had to accommodate for one at the beginning. It wasn't until later where I met people that don't speak Spanish where I started to realize like, oh, like I'm a Mexican American, like I'm different from them, you know?
Right. So there was more like a community here that helped brought you up, so it felt like it was the norm, right, Anna?
Yeah.
That's so interesting because like I think for me I was just missing that community. What about you, Norman?
Actually, it's same thing. I don't have that community that Anna's experiencing, because I used to live in New York for 4 years, and there are not that many Filipinos in New York, especially in Syracuse where I stayed for 4 years. There's like only like a few people that I know who are Filipino. And by the way, I live in a rural area. So basically, after my house, behind my house, there's like a creek, and then there's jungle behind it, behind the creek.
Is that in the Philippines? Is that what you're saying? Or
no, this is back in New York.
Wait, really? They had a creek? That's so cool.
Yeah, I liked it.
That's awesome.
I just like got used into a rural life back in New York.
I see. So that's pretty interesting because I don't know the lifestyle of New York, and would you say it's very fast paced over there?
Well, that is in New York City. I've only been in New York City for like twice. And like everyone's going back and forth, even like at 2 a.m. in the morning.
That's crazy.
But 2 a.m. in the morning in New York, like in Syracuse, right? Like that could be like a little dangerous. Like there's basically no one's awake at 2 a.m. in the morning in Syracuse.
I see. Interesting. All right. Thank you guys for sharing about your bicultural upbringing. I think for me, when it comes to defining bicultural upbringing, it's more of like there's a really like big division between two cultures. So like for me, it was just my house was Filipino, outside my house was America. That was kind of like that line for me. Because at home, my parents would always reinforce, oh, you remember you're Filipino, you gotta maintain your culture, you gotta be respectful to your parents, you gotta do this, this, and that, you know, because like home is Asian culture is kind of how they put that line in. But when I was out, it was like, you know, when I want to bring what I learned into like the outside world, I remember I would not be able to connect with my classmates at that time because they were just not culturally educated, you know? So it was very hard for me to assimilate, and it was difficult for me to find friends who accepted me for who I was. So yeah, I think I was very aware of these minute details when I was young. But yeah, that's how I would define bicultural upbringing, is just like there's two cultures that are happening, and there's like this invisible line separating the two. That's how I saw it, at least. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna move on to the next question. We have, what was your earliest memory that made you realize that you were living in two worlds?
It's a hard one.
You want me to go first, or?
Let Anna think of it a little bit. So Norman, go ahead.
Yeah, like what Anna said, it's a hard one. I think when I moved in New York when I was 14, even though like I lived with my mom and my sister who are Filipinos, and my stepdad and my stepbrother were again American, like within the household, just the household, like I have to maintain that, like I have to speak Tagalog to my mom and to my sister, but when it comes to my stepbrother and stepfather, you have to speak American. So from that time I realized that okay, I have these like two worlds right here. So so besides my mom and my sister, I also go to YouTube to watch some Filipino shows, and that is like my bubble area for like, this is my heritage, like this is where I came from, and that's how I still remain how to speak Tagalog. But outside of that, it has to be English.
Ooh, I see.
So I think, yeah, when I was moved in when I was 14, and when I moved back here in California, then my Filipino bubble area kind of like grew, because there's a lot of Filipinos in here who speaks Tagalog, and finally I can speak Tagalog to someone else, like just outside my household.
I see. So, when you said here, are you referring to California?
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
I should have clarified that.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So you had more of that experience when you moved here, more so than New York. Is that correct?
Not experienced. It's just that my Filipino bubble, compared to New York, more like expanded, because again, I can talk to someone in Tagalog like Johanna, and some other people as well.
Oh, I see. Got it. Okay. What about you, Anna? Did you figure out an answer for the question?
Yeah. Wait, just to double check first. Can you guys hear an echo? Or is
No.
it just me?
No.
Yeah, I'm hearing the echo, but not yours.
Oh, if you're watching the share screen, maybe.
Oh.
Might be that. That might be it.
Okay.
I kind of figured.
So for me, I think my earliest memory that made me realize that I was living like in two worlds was when I was like 6 or 8. My cousins from Mexico would come like every year to visit. And I remember they were like mocking me, and so were like my aunts and uncles that came to visit. It was mainly because my Spanish was like broken. It was Spanglish basically, because that's how I communicated with my friends here. And it was interesting because like over here, even with my like Spanglish, I was still considered Mexican, like part of the culture, as long as I knew like most of it, or I can understand what they were saying and respond. But with my cousins, I was considered like white American. And it was like weird because it was like in limbo, where you want to identify as Mexican here in the United States, but it's like reality hits you that you're not really Mexican. Like when I go to Mexico, they don't necessarily consider you Mexican. So it's like a double standard in a sense. Yeah. I think the funniest part was, I guess I would mix up my words in Spanish. So in Spanish, pelota and paletas kind of sound the same. And I was trying to tell my cousins what the ice cream man was selling. And I was supposed to say paletas, which is like ice cream. Ice cream bars.
Ooh.
But I said pelotas, which translates to balls. So they still mock me till this day.
Oh.
They're like, remember that time when you told us that? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. They're like, they won't let you live down that like innocent memory. You're just like, you guys move on from that. That was long ago.
Yeah.
Oh.
Grow up, people.
Grow up, yes. Find something new to talk about besides my embarrassment. I don't need to relive this moment. So, I see. Interesting. So your cousins are the ones who brought it up. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I have something that's quite similar to yours, Anna. I think for me, it was just the language, definitely. How do I say this? I'm trying to remember, like, living in two worlds. I I definitely felt like when I spoke Tagalog when I was younger, I was super fluent. But as I grew up, I've never had my Tagalog corrected, so it's always in the wrong tense form, or if I use a wrong word. Like, it's a similar word, but it's not the right word in that context. You get what I mean, right? So, like, there's a better word for it. So I'll give an example. There's a word that I use called lamig and ginaw. So one of them is to experience cold, and one is to talk about the cold weather, or something is cold. So if I say lamig ako, it's so weird because that's not how you say it. You would say ginawa ko, which means, I experience cold, I'm feeling cold. But if I say wow, lamig, like wow, it's cold. I would swap the two back then. So when I had like Filipino friends, they'd be like, you're using the wrong one, or they would laugh too. So I would become conscious of how I spoke, and I felt like I couldn't speak Tagalog anymore. So I kind of felt like I was super Americanized in a way because my parents just never felt the need to correct me in Tagalog when I was younger. So I stuck with all the mistakes. Even to this day, I still feel a little bit hesitant speaking in Tagalog. Like, I would talk if I'm with someone I'm comfortable with and they don't mind that, but that's like a permanent brokenness of me when it comes to Tagalog. But also, I think another thing that made me realize that I was living in two worlds was like, I remember I told a story, I think, to a classmate about like, I mean like how we treat our parents at home. You know, like an example is I had like American friends, and I remember their parents would tell me, call me by my first name. And I was like, I can never do that. To this day, I can still never do that. Not unless they're like classmates of mine, or my students, then I would go by first name basis. But if they're older than me, I tend to go by their last name and go like Mr., Miss, or Mrs., blah, 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 right? So that's when I realized that's something I cannot do, because like, even with my friends, you can't call my parents by their first name. They will not allow you. They would find that super disrespectful to this day. But unless like, they're like, again, if they're classmates in schools, they can go by first name basis or whatever. But my friends, I think one of my friends tried calling my parents by their first name, and I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. They will not be happy with that. So
they would give you that.
They would make that glare. Yeah, they would make that glare. They would just glare at you, and I'm just like, yeah, you don't want to be. My parents are not okay with first name basis, so don't treat them like Americans. I remember that at such a young age because I asked my parents, I'm like, Mom, Dad, why don't you go by first name basis? Because excuse me. I said, so-and-so's parents tell me to call them by their first name, and my parents are like, you don't do that. Like, we brought you up to be respectful, so don't ever call them by their first name, even if they insist. Be kind. And I'm just like. So my sister and I have it ingrained in us that we don't refer to people by their first name, not unless there's specific reasons to allow us to, like being a teacher, being of a upper position in a job, etc. But other than that, it's like, no, I'd rather call you by your last name just because it's courtesy. I don't know, it's just ingrained in me. That's what I would say.
I have a quick question to you about your parents.
Yeah, go for it.
So would they allow your friends to call them what's your parents' name by any chance?
Mom's name is Mirna, dad's name is Lem.
Lem. So let's say I come to your house and say, oh, good morning, Tito Lem, how are you?
Oh, that one's okay because that's still respectful. That's totally Filipino culture.
Yeah.
You call them by uncle or aunt, they're fine with that. But if you call them by just their name, they would be pissed.
Yeah, because anyone who is older than you, so that depends. So since I'm friend with Hannah, I would refer to their to her parents as Tito and Tita, which translates to uncle, even though I'm not related to them.
Yeah, and that's fine. I feel like a lot of Asian cultures show that. I think I can't speak for Korean, so only Susie and John can say if you refer to friends as parents as uncle or aunt. I've seen like Singapore films where they refer to their friends' parents as uncle or auntie. I've seen that one. Is it the same for you, Anna? Do you refer to friends, like people who share the same culture as you? Do you call them Tio and Tia as well, or no?
think it depends on how familiar I am with them.
I see.
Sometimes if they're like family friends, we do.
I see.
Or I think for us, we give them nicknames. Like Tio, I call him like Tio Alto. Like he's like super tall, or yeah. We give him like little nicknames with Tio or Tia.
I see.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting to hear these different cultures of how we refer to these people. But yeah, it's just so interesting to hear different cultures and our perceptions of like how do we refer people in terms of familiarity. I think when it comes to oh, Norman, I think we lost your video.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You're fine. But when we refer to tita and tito in the Philippines, or like anyone from the Filipino background, it's just used as a replacement for Mr. and Mrs. It doesn't matter if you're related to them, it's just out of respect. So it's like, yeah, so if I don't know this person, he's a complete stranger, I would say tito. If he's someone who's near my age, I would say kuya, you know, because we're trying to get a little bit closer, but not too far that it's too disrespectful. Like for example, when it comes to Norman, if Norman and I first met each other and we're not that close, maybe I would distance myself by calling him kuya because he is older than me. But we're around the same age, so we go by first name basis. But if it would be so disrespectful if I went up to Norman and I said, "Hey, Lolo," you know, he'd be like, "Lolo."
Way too disrespectful.
That's way too disrespectful. We have something called mano. It's as you hear it, Anna. Mano is like taking the hand and blessing it to your forehead. If you do that to someone who's your age, that's super disrespectful too. So if I did that to Norman would be like, "Hey, don't do that," you know? Because it's a sign of respect for the elderly in particular. So if you do that to someone who's around your age, you're like, "Hey, don't do that to me. I'm not old yet," you know?
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So like greeting wise, it also shows
next
too.
time I meet your grandmother, maybe I should do that.
You should do that. My Lola would love that.
Yeah.
Lola would love that. To be like, "Oh," she'll say, "Oh my God, this guy's educated. He's so Filipino. I love it." She's gonna be talking about that. That's Lola for you.
I was gonna say, Hana.
Yeah.
Like in my culture, we call each other by our first names more commonly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So even if they're parents, we will call them by their first names.
Wow, you guys are so casual. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Dang, that is actually pretty awesome. Right. So we'll move on to the next question, because I know we have a lot of questions for today. Next one is, do you believe having two languages created two different identities for you? Please explain.
Oh yeah, remember this one.
All right, Norman.
So when I remember when I talked to my brothers back in Philippines, like through Messenger, it seems like I'm a different person that I'm representing right now. Basically, it seems like that I am more not aggressive, but kind of like more forward when it comes to my ideas.
Assertive?
Yeah, I would say so. I told you that my brother and I would like talk about religion or religions, and then like we would go back and forth, and I would be more assertive than like, no, I know I'm right. So yeah, I think I'm a little more assertive, I would say, but I think that's only because I'm only talking to him. Basically. But when it comes to my uncle though, back in California, I think I'm not assertive, but I just have that voice that it seems like I am assertive. But when I speak English now, it's a little bit different. I think it really depends on who do you talk to, basically. I mean, I speak Tagalog to my uncle, to my sister, and to my brother, and it seems like I have like the same tone. But when I talk to everyone else, I would be in English, and I would talk basically like this. How you see me right now.
Don't you think maybe it could be relationship with people that could affect your identity more so than the language itself? If that's the case, because you mentioned like different people, like you're assertive only with your brother, but everyone else it's different.
I think I'm basing it on how I talk, like on the sound of how am I talking, basically. Because like, I mean, when I talk to my sister, we don't argue like my brother back in Philippines, but I still have that same tone when I talk to my brother. So I use that tone to talk to my sister and talk to my uncle. It sounds like I'm aggressive, or like not aggressive, assertive. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I'm just explaining things.
Right.
But when it comes to like speaking English, basically, this is how you see me talk.
I see. Okay, so you have like two. You kind of see that you have different identities. All right, that's fair.
Yeah, I'm more like an assertive when I speak Tagalog, but when I speak English, I don't know how you see this.
You're actually more tame when you speak English. You're very polite. You hedge a lot.
Oh,
That's
okay,
something I see at least. That's me
sounds
at
good.
least. Yeah.
But when I speak Tagalog to you, though, how does it sound like?
It's the same. You're not really different with me.
Oh.
To be honest with you, yeah.
I think it really depends on who I talk to.
I think so too. That's my opinion, at least from you. But yeah, that's at least what I feel. Anna, what about you? Do you have two different identities when you're like, for example, speaking Spanish and in English?
I'm gonna say yes. Mainly because of the environments I use them in. Like in English, I mainly well, English and Spanglish is usually what I use to speak with my friends. But actual like full Spanish, it's more formal. I use it with my parents. I'm translating, or it's either like I used to be in a church, and I was like I guess education department chair thingy in the church. So I would constantly have to go up on stage, translate, talk to parents, things like that. So it was always very formal Spanish. I don't use like slang too much in Spanish. It's always more formal. Unless it's Spanglish that I used it more casually.
Is it the same for you, for your identity in English, or is it just completely different?
In English?
Yeah, like, because you say you use Spanish more for, depending on the environment. One is for translation, so you're always using formal Spanish. And then you have Spanglish when you're with your people you're close to. And would you say, are they the same identity as who you are in English, like when you speak English? Or is it completely different?
That's a hard one because I use English in more environments. So I feel like my English identity is a little bit more dynamic. Because Spanglish is only something I can use with a certain group of people.
I see.
Does that make sense? It's not like English I can use in almost every environment here in the United States. So I could use it with slang with like my siblings. I could use it in a formal manner. I could use it with you guys, which are my friends, and it's casual as well. But with Spanglish, it's only like with a certain group of friends that understand it.
I see.
And I wouldn't use Spanglish like in a work setting or something like that.
I see.
It would be formal Spanish.
Oh, okay.
I have a quick question for Anna. So, on general daily basis, do you think in English or do you think in Spanish or Spanglish?
Oh, that's a hard one. I feel like it depends on what I'm doing, to be honest.
Ooh, that's
Like school-wise, I think in English.
Mm.
But there's, I don't know, when I'm describing certain things in like everyday language, sometimes Spanish comes out or Spanglish. So
That's interesting.
if it's more like complex language and thought, it's definitely English because my Spanish isn't that advanced. But like if it's casual conversation, sometimes I think more in Spanish.
Interesting. All right.
The reason that I questioned that is I did ask one of my students if they think in Spanish or in their native language. And they were like, well, some of them says like half and half, like what you told me, Anna, and some of them would think fully in English only because they want to learn English. But like same with you, Hannah, or with Anna. I would think half and half as well. So if I'm talking to my brother, sister, uncle, or if I'm watching a Filipino show, I would think in Tagalog, but outside of that bubble would be English.
I see. Interesting. So you have like those moments too. That's actually a great question to ask as well because you kind of see like what language is dominant. For me, it's predominantly English. My thoughts are always in English. There's only a rare time when I speak in Tagalog, and it's just when I want to respond to something, you know? Like, I feel like I've totally backtracked, so I'm not fluent in Tagalog anymore. I've become an advanced Tagalog speaker. That's what it feels like for me. Because it's like, I'm trying to think of what to say, and then, or sometimes I talk to myself aloud in Tagalog. So, it's just it's just all about maintenance, at least for me. But other than that, everything's predominantly English. That's a great question.
But sometimes I would catch you speaking Tagalog to me, like you were like, "Kill that cockroach! Kill that cockroach!" I was like, "Where's the cockroach?"
Oh my god. Yes, let me see. It's when I know you're a Tagalog speaker, it comes out. It's a trigger for me. That's what I think. Sometimes when I'm around people who are Filipino and if they know Tagalog, it would come out unconsciously, and then I would realize maybe like a second or two, I'd be like, ah, shit, I talked to you in Tagalog. Sorry. Yeah, it's just triggers happen to me. When I'm talking to my Lola or when I'm talking to my parents, Tagalog comes out more often. Not so much in thinking, but I think, for me, I talk before I think in Tagalog. That's usually what happens in my case.
Are you translating?
In my head, no. Not at all. So like, whenever I speak first, it just comes out. That's it. And I'm just like, that's why I know I'm still fluent, because I don't take time to think about it. If anything, I do that when I'm in like Tagalog class, when I took that in college. Because that's where grammar matters, you know? And I'm just like, I have to backtrack for a second. And then I would have like conversations in my head where I'm like, okay, which tense is this? Is it ma? Is it doubling the word? Am I doing this? Like, I'm always asking myself the question, is it ulan, mag-ulan, uulan, like, you know, that means to rain. So I'm like doing different like tenses of it, and I'm like, which one is the right one? So
yeah, I mean, to be honest, Tagalog is kind of hard to.
It's hard.
It's hard to learn it, especially the verbs. Like I'm telling you.
Yeah.
That the the affixes sometimes is way longer than the root word.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, ridiculous.
I don't know why they do that, but yeah, it's a thing apparently. But yeah, if you guys take the Tagalog classes, let us know how that goes for you. So we're gonna move on to the next question. So let's start with Anna this time. Do you remember your earliest assimilation interactions?
Assimilation?
Like if you were, like, since you mentioned you had bicultural upbringings, was there a time you had to assimilate into the predominant language. So
Like forcefully?
kind of, I would say. I mean, I think the most common route for all three of us is school. We had to assimilate no matter what. But yeah, do you remember your earliest one?
I think mine started at home,
Oh, really?
and it was primarily because I have older siblings,
Mm-hmm.
and the way I interacted with them was through English. Because they were already in school.
Oh.
So when I communicated with my parents, it was Spanish, but with my siblings, it was English.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. I didn't expect it to start from the house first.
Yeah. I guess it's because for them it would be school,
Mm-hmm.
but since I was much younger than them, I was introduced to English in the home with them.
Oh, I see. Hmm.
Yeah. And like even like the friends I grew up with, because my mom had like a close knit friend group
Mm-hmm.
where all her best friends had babies all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So all of their children and us grew up together essentially. So even with them, I would communicate in English.
I see.
So, yeah.
That's so interesting. It's just so rare for me to come across someone who just says, "Oh, it's at home," because I feel like my house is like the boundary. It's like, no, that's where you split off from. America, you're in a Tagalog house, so Filipino house, so you're gonna speak Tagalog and all that stuff that comes with it.
Don't get me wrong, like my parents tried to stop it
Uh-huh.
in a sense where they would be like, in the household you speak Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't work out that well because all of our siblings outmatched our parents. We're like 7 children, 2 parents. So when we would communicate, it didn't really matter. We would speak in English. Unless it's with our parents.
Okay, I see. I just think that's interesting because yours is just the person that you're talking to. Also, I'm trying to see if I can fix the echo problems. I apologize. I know now why you guys are echoing is because I put the channel for your voices through my music, so that YouTube can catch it. So I apologize for the echoes. So it's fine on the stream. I was gonna change the channel, but I'm afraid that it might do something to the audio. So again, bear with me on the echo. I'm sorry that you guys are hearing yourself echo through my volume for now. It's just because I'm fixing the output and trying to figure out how to do it on YouTube. Let me see. Wait, let me at least try one thing first here. So while I'm fixing this, Norman, go ahead and answer. What is your earliest assimilation interaction?
I mean, back in Philippines, when I talked to my stepbrother and my stepfather, I would use English, more like a broken English. But when I moved in the United States, then I have to speak English on a regular basis because I speak English and Tagalog in a household, but in school though I have to speak English. I think that's pretty much it. I remember oh, I'm sorry, did I lose myself?
Oh wait, are you now echoing again?
Oh, I'm not echoing anymore. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
he's
because
fine.
I
Thank
could
you,
hear
Hunter.
myself echoing earlier. I was like, did I mute myself? Or
Yeah, I'm checking the audio right now to see if it works because I'm
yeah,
changing
I think it
channel.
works now. I don't hear myself now.
Yeah, it works now. Awesome. I'm also checking from my phone that. Hold on one second. Yay, it works now. Okay, awesome. I fixed it. Yay! Yeah, it's
Alright.
hard. This is a hard business here for me. Yes, I love patches. Thank you, John. Sorry. Go ahead, continue, Norman. It should work now.
No, Basically, my earliest assimilation, um, when in terms of like speaking English on a regular basis, I would say school basically. But pre-assimilation stages, it would be probably around the household, and then pre back in Philippines, where I had to speak English only to my stepbrother and to my step father. But when I moved here in the United States, in New York, I would speak English not only to my stepfather and my stepbrother, but outside of the household too, where everyone speaks English. So yeah, I would say back in middle school.
I see. Interesting.
When is your assimilation?
Who were you talking to?
You, Hannah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, because it's hard when you're online. You're just like, who are you talking to? There's no social cues. My earliest assimilation, definitely preschool, I guess. I can't remember. Like, the one that I remember as my earliest memory was, it starts for me in second grade, I think. This is where I gave it a chance. This is horrible of me to say.
What do you mean, give it a chance?
I was trying to become like part of a friend group. That's where my assimilation started. So technically, it should have started in preschool when I first came to America, but that didn't happen. Mainly because I don't remember. I was too young. But I remember my earliest attempt to assimilate with people was to make a friend in America. I remember it was just because like I was a transfer student, so I went to a private school first, and assimilation there was easy. I made friends right away. I only remember that I had two best friends named Anna and Lola. Those were my two besties in elementary school.
Where's Norman?
Norman doesn't exist there. Sorry. But yeah, I grew up with like two friends, and then I had to transfer out because, you know, private schools can get really expensive. So I had to leave, and I left around second grade, I think. And then that's when the assimilation memory came in. It was hard for me because I was a transfer student. I probably did not look attractive to my classmates. Like, I wasn't cute, is what I meant. Because I remember another student transferred in, and she was so adorable. Everyone was nice to her, but I was bullied. I was like, I'm a transfer student too, but you guys bully me. Yeah, so my assimilation interaction was I had to act like I was not myself, you know, like I became the class clown. I purposely banged my head underneath my desk to make my classmates laugh so people could like me. I remember that I kind of allowed the bullying to happen because I knew they were stealing stuff from me. Like, I would have these I don't know if you guys remember, like back in the day, they would have these pencils and they would have like these cute designs on pencils and stuff, you know? And in elementary school, what they would make me do is you have to put your class number on it. So I had the number 18 a lot. So I would write like number 18 on my pencil, and then someone would steal it, and then they would scratch it over with Sharpie and put another one over it and put their number and say, this is my pencil now. I remember that the way that they would steal from me was they would tell me, oh, Hannah, look over there, and I would look, and then they would go inside my desk and steal my pencil, and they would do that. And then when I found out my pencil was missing, I would say, hey, that's my pencil, because I would recognize they have it. They're like, no, this is a gift from my grandma. And I remember, oh my gosh, I had this one badass moment. I was like, if you don't tell the truth, I'm going to report you to the principal. And I scared that student for life. And I was like, and she's like, oh, you're a snitch. And I'm like, well, you're going to be expelled, so go ahead and try. And then she was just, I just didn't care. I was like, you think I'm gonna be scared because you call me a snitch? So, yeah, that I remember my assimilation was I tried to please everyone, but then it backfired on me because when they bullied me, I stood up for myself. So I'm like, there you go, my assimilation just crumbled right there. Because from that point on, like my friends were like, oh yeah, Hannah's a snitch. Don't do anything to her, blah blah blah. And I'm like, you can call me a snitch, but at least I'm protected.
Just don't do anything then.
Yeah, like.
You know?
You can call me a snitch all you want, but that means I'm protected because no one's gonna try and bully me from that point on.
Don't steal anything from me.
Yeah.
Then, you know, everything will be Gucci.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm like, from now on, don't do that. Yeah. But yeah, that was my assimilation. Was unfortunately through bullying and ostracized. Yeah, and being ostracized when I was younger. Unfortunately. But yeah, those were my memories. Norman, what about you? Or did you already answer?
Yeah, I already went.
Oh, my bad. It's like, see my memories going like, ooh, right there. My bad.
Yeah, good.
Anna, did you already answer the assimilation question? Just checking.
Yeah,
Okay.
I said within the home.
Oh yeah, within the home. All right. Sorry guys, my brain is so today. All right, we have a linguistic question for you guys. So since we are all linguists, what are your thoughts on the discouragement of speaking in the native language during the early 2000s? Have you experienced it? If yes, share your experience. I like this question a lot, so if you need time to think, I'll share you my experience. In the early 2000s, when I came to America, it was around 2001 when my sister and I arrived in America. So what happens is, since we are foreign exchange students, or like we're students who transferred in, we were immediately tested for our English. So at the time, how to test a student in terms of their learning skills was not really reliable. Now that I look back and think about it, I had a teacher tell me to bounce the ball or just jump in place, skip, and then just like listen to instructions, right? Even though I was being tested, it was verbal, and I was being watched by the teacher. So I was really shy. So even though she told me to bounce the ball, I knew what she was saying to me. I understood. And I saw her reactions too, because she would take the ball and start bouncing it. And I would be like, I just stood there, I didn't do anything. So they didn't consider that shyness was a reason why I shouldn't have been held back a grade. That's one. So if you guys didn't know, I was pushed a grade behind. So if you were born in 1995, I should have been, when I arrived, I should have been in first grade or kindergarten. But when I arrived, they put me in preschool. They made me go back a grade. And even so, they made me take ESL classes on top of that too. So when I got to first grade, I still took ESL classes, which is crazy. So in a way, I kind of thought that, I think, I don't really, I can't remember a lot of things, but I do remember I was being taken out of class a lot. So in a way, it just makes me feel like maybe the system of how they were teaching me English back then was not a good or reliable way of me learning at the time. But anyways, point is, in the early 2000s, they discouraged speaking English because at the time, they mentioned that if you learn multiple languages, the student and the child will be confused amongst using them. So they really, so my teacher told my parents, stop talking to her in Tagalog. You have to stop completely. When she comes home too, even at your house, you need to stop talking to Hannah and Shannon in Tagalog because it's going to mess them up when they're speaking English. That was their belief back then. So unfortunately, there were like tremendous consequences. So definitely the biggest consequence for me personally was my Tagalog is broken. It's hard for me to think about the tense form. I say things right away and I don't realize that I use a wrong tense form for it. That's the permanent damage from that. And also my parents never corrected me. So they kind of took the advice from the teacher and they never felt the need to correct my Tagalog. So, and my parents' reasoning was, oh, you live in America, so you're just gonna speak English. You're not gonna use Tagalog. So I never felt the need that I had to teach you Tagalog or fix it at all. So that was my permanent damage in Tagalog. My sister, on the other hand, she can no longer speak Tagalog anymore. She was so fluent when she was young, from from 0 to, I mean, how many months when she was born, up until she was 3 years old or 2 years old. She was able to speak Tagalog and then she lost it completely. Because for children, since we all study this in what is it called, child development for linguistics, when a child decides that the language is not going to be used and it's not their priority anymore, they will choose to lose the language. So when Shannon was growing up here in America, she kind of perceived that, oh, English is a dominant language. Mom and dad talk to me in English anyway. and my friends all speak in English. So my sister, she completely forgot Tagalog. She can't even speak Tagalog. It's very, we call it whitewashed. So she has a very American
It
English.
is whitewash.
Yeah, so she would say like, for example, when you say ano ka ba, like, oh, what are you saying is the translation for that. So she would be like, ano ka ba? You know, like she's got that white accent in it. So she can't speak Tagalog anymore. She lost it because she made that decision at a young age that Tagalog is no longer worth learning. So she just doesn't remember how to speak it, but she can understand everything in Tagalog, which is interesting. So she chose to remember to understand, but she chose not to speak the language anymore. And it's so interesting to see how children make that decision at a young age. So the people around them, they need to take, responsibility that if they want their child to remember language, you kind of have to create that environment that they must learn the language. Because if not, the child can decide, no, I don't want it anymore. But yeah, those are my experience when it came to learning, like being brought up in an education where English was perceived as the only language that you must learn and not to learn anything else. But yeah. What about you, Norman?
Well, I don't have any experience because they never discouraged me to speak Tagalog because I came to New York when I was back in 2010, so that was like not that a while ago, to be honest. So there are no discouragement. They would just put me in ESL classroom, and usually in ESL classroom we're just doing our homework, and if we have questions, we're gonna ask our teachers, and that's basically it. However, though, unfortunately, I'm sorry that you experienced that, and because of that thing that you experience, it damages your speaking skills to when it comes to Tagalog. Unfortunately, I don't have the experience, but I remember my stepfather told me about his experience because my stepfather was born in France. Then he moved here when he was, I think, 6 or 8 years old, and he speaks French and German because like he lives in that border back then, and a lot of kids bullied him because he doesn't speak English. So I think that was his that kind of discourages him from speaking in French and in German, and now he doesn't speak those language. He just speaks English, unfortunately. I mean, it would be nice to keep it, but so the thing that you, Hannah, and my that experience came from discouragement of like not speaking your native language, and that is a very damaging to the language that you were born with, because a lot of people are like, because people will bully you because you are different. Like, this is back then, right? So right now we live in the era where it's okay, like it's more acceptable now that we speak in our native language, like even though out in public, right? Because you are minding your own business basically. And for example, like sometimes I talk to you in Tagalog only because like you would sometimes you would understand the joke in Tagalog, but if I explain it to Anna in English, then it loses the value. That's why I don't really tell Anna.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. All right, Anna, your turn.
I think for me, I had a different experience from you, Hannah. Just primarily because the schools I went to, mostly everybody was Hispanic. So the teachers were primarily Hispanic. They were all bilingual. So it was never like, don't speak it. It was more like, oh, that's a good thing. Like I remember my kindergarten teacher talking to my mom, how she was impressed with like my Spanish at the time when I was little. She was like, yeah, it's important that you keep them bilingual. So it was always encouraged, actually. It was never like discouraged. I think the only time I ever like experienced like the discouragement of something like that, it was actually with Spanish, because it's similar thing in Mexico, where there's a lot of indigenous languages, and Spanish is actually the dominant language. My dad, sometimes his Spanish has words of perpetua, which is the language from where he's from. But my mom calls it like it. She discourages it from our Spanish. Like, don't speak that language. Like, that's not how you say things. So I think I experienced that more with the Spanish side than the actual like English education system. Yeah.
I see. So it was
yeah.
like your mom's influence. Yeah, that makes sense because it has to be someone in your environment that causes you to lose the language. Because for me, it was not just the school system, it was also my parents too. So I totally get you. Were you still able to understand that language though, Anna? Or did you just completely erase that?
I think my dad's language limitation in that was very minimal. It's like he didn't even know they were words from the native region where he's from until he compares it to my mom's Spanish. And it's then when we start using it that it's considered like an issue. Like, oh, that's not the correct Spanish. Like, that's the broken Spanish. Like, that's lower than Spanish. You shouldn't use that. And I realized that growing up, like, when I found out, like, you know when you do, like, the 23andMe, and you figure out what you are? Like, when my mom found out that we were, like, part Black and part, I was, like, 50% Native American, she was more prideful of the European side than anything else.
Really?
And she was like, no, you're not Black. You're not this. And it's when I came to the conclusion, like, oh, it's kind of like that subtle racism that exists in it. Yeah. So.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel that. I think it's because we look at colonizers as like, I don't know, we put them on a pedestal.
Like,
Great.
Pedestal.
Yeah, we do. I mean, that's
Now
colonizing
we
life.
kick that pedestal.
Yeah, we do. Like, today we're like, kick that pedestal. We're out. We're out of that. I see. So yeah, that's so interesting because I totally get your guys' experience with that. Norman, I wanted to comment about what you said. When you arrived in 2010, that's when they reinstated learning multiple language was actually encouraged. I remember because there's this thing called the Seal of Biliteracy. They awarded students during junior high school. I remember specifically, it was in 8th grade. They announced it. And that was in 2009. 2000, like late 2009 or something? No, spring 2009. Because I remember I was a TA when I specifically saw that question or an announcement. They said on, it was on the paper, I think, for registration. It said if you take 4 years.
Was it on federal level?
What do you mean federal level?
Was it on the federal level? Like, because if it was on state level, then that would only affect California. But when it comes to federal level, it'll be all states.
It's probably federal level. Because because you were in New York, I was in California.
Yeah.
So,
that's interesting.
Because
it could also be like district, because I remember from my school, they didn't do that. They actually encouraged us. And even the teachers would say, oh, studies show that it's better. I remember, because even when my brother was younger, it was considered a good thing. I think it might have been more like a regional thing.
I don't know.
Because
maybe.
I don't know.
Well, it also depends
Maybe.
because, Anna, you mentioned that you went to a school that already spoke Spanish, right? It could be the type of school.
Students were primarily Hispanic.
That could be the case
teachers,
too.
they were Hispanic too, and then the ones that weren't Hispanic, they knew some broken Spanish too.
I see.
Because almost
maybe
everybody
because
Spanish.
maybe in Anna's like, you know, since Spanish is kind of like being like one of the minor languages in the United States, maybe it's more encouraged.
Then like
that's what I was thinking
English,
too.
because English is more national. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too, because I remember when I did my research in education, they said some schools are kind of what's the word for it? They're like dedicated to a certain group. And I hate to use the word. They said the minority group, quote, quote. So if the minority is a predominant of the school, then there's a higher chance that they speak exposure to the language. That's what I remember hearing. So,
it could be that.
It could be that for in your case. It could be. Because I went to a school that wasn't dominant in the minority group. It was predominantly white. And we had a sudden surge of Asians in the school. I remember I was like, wow, we nicknamed it the Asian invasion in middle school. And because I went to middle school, I was like, there's so many white students here. But then when my year came in, there was like a huge surge of Asian students. And I'm like, dang, are we the era that's bringing in all the Asians here? But yeah, so then we had the nickname. We were like, oh, dang, this must be the Asian invasion that's happening here. So yeah, it was just interesting because in my school, they all had the reputation of being like more predominantly white students. And that was when they introduced the idea of, hey, if you take Spanish for 4 years, so if you take it now up until high school, when you finish your first 4 years of whatever language, either Spanish or French, you will get the seal of biliteracy. And I was like, seal of biliteracy? And I'm like, okay, I guess. And then I moved to, what was the word I was looking for? Oh yeah, so they put on the registrations that, oops, sorry, I think I did something to stream. They said that if you pursue for 4 years, you have to dedicate 4 years into a language, then you could be considered a seal of biliteracy student, or there's another, I was thinking awardant. Is that a word? Awardee?
Oh.
Like...
Maybe
an awardee is the one who accepts the awards.
Like they're gonna be presented the award. You get the seal of biliteracy when you graduate. So I have that on my my senior diploma. There's a little stamp that says seal of biliteracy, and I'm like, I should be triliteracy, bro. I know Tagalog. And then at the time they didn't recognize Tagalog, and I was like, is that like an early 2000s thing? Like, were they just slowly?
Probably,
that was my experience there, because I was like, oh, you guys were not really like aware of what languages were popular, because I think around 2010, that's when they the education started to be more conscious of other languages. Like, hello, we had a Korean community here, we had a big surge of Chinese students here, we have Filipinos are huge, Vietnamese are huge, you know, Mexicans are huge, always been huge. So there's a lot of different cultures over here. So I think the education system was kind of late in educating themselves of, you know, offering more classes. I remember there were some students who wanted to move to Western High School because it was the only high school that offered Filipino classes. And my friends went there because they wanted that, wanted to have the Filipino class. And Western also taught Japanese in high school. They also taught... most schools in general, they have Spanish and French are the usual offers, but to have Tagalog and Japanese also offered, everyone was like, I want to go to Western just because those schools are awesome, you know? Or like they have those language courses, it's different. But yeah, that was just interesting for me in terms of language. I was just like, we've really come a long way. Like, we're now in the 2020s era, so...
2023. Unbelievable.
2020s era, but like, yes, specifically 2023, we're becoming more and more woke, more educated, more aware of all of these.
More aware, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, ironically, this kind of belief like kind of still exists like within the speech pathology field.
Yes, absolutely.
When students have like disabilities with speech, sometimes they're like discouraged from speaking another language, like being bilingual.
Yes.
I know with my friend's child, he has like a speech impediment kind of thing, and they kind of discouraged her from using 2 languages at one time as well.
Really?
So it's interesting. I mean, there could be some truth to it. You never know. I mean, that's not my field per se, but yeah.
That's actually quite interesting.
That's interesting.
Speech impediments, I usually associate that language is triggered. It's a triggered experience. So unless that person was introduced to multiple languages in the same environments, I could see why they get confused, especially if they're young, right? So I feel like the older they are, near their critical period, that's when they're able to make that distinguishment between them. At least those are my thoughts. That's
When
so
you're
interesting,
talking
though.
about the critical period, are you talking about the critical window period? Because that would
Yes.
be, I think, a different thing. Oh,
Yeah.
it's this. Oh,
Which
okay.
within like they gave me two numbers. They say 10, they say 13. Those are the two numbers I always receive. They say 13 is the cutoff period. So once you turn 13, that part of your brain that's able to distinguish languages or be able to make patterns in a language turns off. So you have to go through what majority all adults go through, which is learning from school.
Yeah.
So for students who are like maybe under 10, there is a possibility where they can confuse the language, like which one to use. But if you have a specific environment, I think it's okay. I actually have a student that I'm working with, and I coach her on having her children remember English and Korean. And I told her that if you have your children use them in like associate maybe one of the parents use English more or the other parent uses Korean, or if they encourage them to have an environment where they use English and apply it, then it's great. But yeah,
That's actually a good one.
yeah, like actually it's hard because this student is from Korea and it's really hard to find an English speaker or English community there at times, depending on where you are, of course. And I remember one of her stories was when she met a foreign couple, a foreign family that moved into Korea. They had children that only spoke English. So that her children, when they found out that they spoke English, they were so excited. They just spoke in English the entire time because they had a friend to speak in English. But when they went to school, it was just all Korean. So the children only spoke Korean at home or at school. There were even times that her children were like, "Oh, mommy, can I speak in Korean with you?" And I'm just like, that's so interesting. I'm like, these children are woke. They know what they're doing. It's just, they definitely create their environment. They just need to see that, I don't know, that encouragement, that liability, or maybe just some sort of trigger that makes them know when to use it, because they can distinguish it. Children are smart. We just don't give them extra credit for it, you know?
Yeah.
It's more like an instinct. They are aware, but they don't. Well, they're not aware that they're learning language. They're just like absorbing it like a wet sponge, basically.
Absolutely.
It's whatever they hear, they would repeat it back.
Yeah, and I think it's also important because I can't find the word that I'm thinking of right now because I keep saying the word trigger, and it could also mean environment. I was encouraging my student. I was like, you have to give your children like these environments. Like, for example, if your students find something to connect the language with, they would have a much more stronger relationship to retain that language that they're learning. So I was saying, if you introduce your children to watching shows in English or reading a book to them in English or letting them play video games in English, now they have a higher, a more like stronger appeal towards retaining the second language of English, and they can become bilinguals when they reach 13. They're officially bilinguals at that point. And she doesn't have to worry anymore by the time they reach the critical period, because at that point her children know both languages fluently. Because mama did her job, she helped them retain English. And of course, living in Korea, they were able to retain, or like they speak predominantly Korean, I would say. So yeah, having these, I don't know what to call them. Are they vices?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was like, are they called vices? Are they called, I can't find the word I'm looking for. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Inhibitors?
What do you mean? Inhibitors?
Because
Can you explain the idea behind it?
The word I'm trying to find is like, you have something that gives you a reason to retain that habit or that hobby. So it's like, I'm thinking about the word liability, but it's like, I don't know what to call it. That's the word I'm looking for. I keep saying, like, the closest word I can think of is environment. That's the closest I can think of.
I mean, that could work as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know.
The other word I'm thinking of is reason. To put it like simply, like for example, Norman, if you had a girlfriend that spoke French, wouldn't you want to learn French just because you want to please her? That's what I'm trying to say.
I would say so. Yeah.
No, that's the word I'm trying to
like
make an
motivation?
example. Like, yeah, motivation. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, motivation.
Yeah, you need to have motivation. Because like without it, you're like, why would I need to learn the language? Then yeah, motivation is one. Sorry for my spiel. But we finished this question. Yes, we went off tangent a
Yes.
bit. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's fine. All right. So next question: since we are all teachers, how do you think you can help students transition smoothly in their assimilation into American culture? Do you guys need time to think?
I would say.
Oh no, Norman, go ahead.
I can go first.
Yeah.
I have a lot. I've been working with the. I'm working at the American Language Institute, and the most question that I get is how to learn English better. And I would always say them that, well, there's no other way than to just actually listen to it. And so the thing that you could do, so I always ask them, first question, what are your hobbies? So some of them would say, oh, I love playing baseball. I love watching vlog, or I just like oh, I really love this. I really want to know how to cook. And I was like, okay, great. So I want you to go to YouTube, go to the search bar and type the things that you like. So for example, baseball, you love baseball, right? So you would type baseball, um, baseball game, let's say, right? Hit enter, and then select one of the videos that shows up. And I told them, just go watch it. It doesn't matter if you don't understand. I just want you to watch it, do it. So watch it, and if there's a caption, go ahead, click the caption, so that you can actually listen to it and read it while they're saying it. There might be some little delay, but that's fine. Even though if you do not understand what they're saying, just keep listening to it. If you get bored, I would say do it 5 minutes at most, 5 minutes every day. And if you are getting more interested into the topic that you're watching, then increase it to 10 minutes, 15, 20, 30, right? And again, if there's a caption, go ahead and watch that caption. So the reason that I'm saying this is because back then in Philippines, does anyone know the comic book Archie's? The Archie?
Yeah.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah,
I think I do.
Yeah, the Archies. It was Archie, Jughead, Veronica, and Betty, and like Reggie as well. So anyway, I loved that comic book when I was a kid. I actually have a lot here back in my closet. So what I would do back then is I would just like read the same old comic book of Archie, and it's like there's like some torn pages in there. And since I love that comic book, I would just like read it over and over again. But while I was reading it, like I don't understand it. And I think that would help you a lot. And that actually helped me a lot in the future. I remember back then, I was at the balcony back in Philippines, and I had that comic book with me. So I was just like reading it, and then my grandma, my mom's mom, like walked by, and she was like, "Why are you reading that, Norman? You don't even understand it." I was like, "I don't know, I like it." So I just keep reading it and reading it. Yeah. So that's the best thing you can do. Go to YouTube or like, I don't know, read a comic book or whatever interests you, right? And that could help. So when you're reading or when you're just listening to language, basically, right? You might not understand it, but in the future, some of the words might ring a bell to you because that person next to you said it, and your brain would be like, "Oh yeah, I know that word." So if you don't understand the word, you are gonna use the context that surrounds that word, right? Context is always important when it comes to language learning. And that's how I learn basically. So if I don't understand the word, I would just like be quiet and I would like use the context that they use that word. So context is the key. It's always like that because you would remember it.
Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a great first-hand experience. It's just context and also maybe revisiting text that you've seen. And it's like you said, sometimes having visual too, because you said it's a comic book. So that's very visually stimulating that you feel like, okay, I can kind of understand the word based on what I see and in the context clues. So you can make that assumption or presumption. Anna, what about you?
Let me read the question really quick. I guess when I think of assimilation into American culture with students, the first thing I think of is culture shock. And usually like that comes in like three phases, which is like honeymoon where everything's cool and interesting. Then you go to like the actual not horrible part, but I guess like the where you feel homesick, you start to reject things, you feel different and out of place. And then it comes to, well, I mean, hopefully everybody gets to the last part, which is like when you feel a part of it, recovery, which is assimilation. So having students go through those phases, I think it's important first to understand that you can't always diminish all of those. Some of those things are going to be unavoidable for those students, but you can always diminish culture shock. I guess the first thing I would do as a teacher would probably be to have them connect to their culture, whether that be like introducing them to clubs or things that are like related to their culture, so that they have those ties or those groups of people or even friends that speak the same language, kind of like we were talking earlier, where you feel that attachment back to home, or at least to your culture, or whatever it may be. I think that's what honestly comes to mind for me. I had one more thing, but I forgot.
It's okay.
Yeah, but that's what I would do.
It's just you're helping them like transition, because making them aware of their cultural changes or the cultural differences or cultural awareness.
It's more like, for example, like if I had in elementary school, sometimes you have students that come from different countries into your country. Right. I mean, into your classroom. Yes. So sometimes what you do is you pair them with people that speak the same language to help them.
Okay. So assimilation that way.
Sometimes, like for example, if you're a university student, you come to CSELB, let's say, for example. You're unfamiliar joining clubs, maybe that, I don't know, have that same feel like Spanish club or something like that, where they have the same culture as you, where you can meet people just like you, to help ease I guess the culture shock, essentially. I think it'll help a lot with assimilation, because American culture isn't just like it's not just one thing. I guess America is a mix of people, so you can't really say something is an American way sometimes. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, because like if you come from a bicultural position, or if you come from a multicultural background, you can't really say it's the American way, because in a way it's not, you know? Like, it could be that gray area where it could just be a mix of the two cultures, so you can't really call it the American way anymore, I would say, because we're all from different places. And just to be frank, let's just put it out there, America is a political dream. Like, technically, what we live in is just it was born from a political dream. So America is technically anything can go. I think
an idea.
It's an idea. Like, people try to make standards for it, and they're like, oh, this is the American way, or this is how you do it in America. It came from an ideology, so we are trying to make something out of it, but is it legit? It's come to be accepted as legit, you know what I mean? But it's just hot.
And the word America can actually change too. Like, as time passes by, like, the American people changes into something different culture. So let's say 100 years from now, the Americans today would be different from Americans 100 years from now. Not only because that the language change, also people change as well. So
Yes.
they kind of like to change the language because the culture is changing as well. So they have to change the language so that they can represent themselves better.
Yes, I
Basically.
agree. Because like language is not without culture. It's always influenced by culture in a way.
It goes like they're like yin and yang, language and
Yeah.
culture, basically.
Yes,
Yeah, and I
exactly.
think, I mean, like, as teachers, apart from actually teaching, like, maybe some things that might be like completely out there for them, I feel like apart from that, you can't really help them too much with it. Just because I feel like it's going to be more of a internal personal thing, but you can definitely help ease it. Yeah, within the classroom.
Yeah. That's a great way to do that in terms of assimilation. I personally, I'm grateful because I actually had experience in this, so I'll tell you guys what I had for my firsthand experience. And I feel like you guys can definitely develop this into like activities or outside activities. Definitely my experience on this is host after school activities, even if it's like a club, because all of these students, they're coming from different countries, they're nervous, they're afraid, they don't know if they'll have people who like them. They've definitely heard the bad things about America, so they need that comfort knowing that they are in a safe place. A lot of times when I was introduced to my new students who are just added, like maybe 3 weeks into the semester or the quarter, they're nervous. So you are the face, technically you as a teacher, you're the representation of America. You're the teacher. So it's important that you welcome them and you make them feel like, hey, you're here. Can I help you with anything? And of course, it's always important. Since I work with adult students, I'm very upfront with them. I tell them, if you ever need something, just tell me. Because in America, if you don't tell me, I won't understand you. I won't understand your problems. So here it's all about communication is very, very important for me as a person and also as your teacher. So how can I help you if you don't talk to me, you know? So, and I always I tell them, I might bite a little bit, you know? I'm just kidding, you know? Because it's just to make them bring down their walls of, defense because they're afraid, of course. So humor is definitely one way to help them lower their guard a little bit and become comfortable. Hosting after-school activities are fun for the students. I remember during a Christmas event, I had students do a optional gift exchange for my students in my class, and I was opening it to other students too if they wanted to join. And after that, we had this whole idea of, I don't know if you guys remember White Elephant. So just to explain what White Elephant is, basically, White Elephant is when you guys are bringing a certain amount of, like spending a certain amount of money, let's say $20 maximum, to buy a present, and it's like everyone takes turns picking a number from, I don't know, like a hat, a random number, and you go by turns. If you like someone's present, you can steal it. So that's White Elephant. It's not White Elephant,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that is White Elephant.
Yeah. Okay, I remembered. Yeah, so you can steal it from someone, and so you have the option to steal, or you can open a new a new gift. So my punishment for my student was you were dared to do something, and I actually really enjoyed this because this was a fun activity that my friends did in their Christmas event. So I had students that say that if you are gonna steal something, the person you steal from, they're gonna tell you what to do as a dare. So some of them was you have to dance to a song, you have to sing to a song, you have to do something, you have to act, for example. And it was just a fun time for everyone because everyone was laughing, everyone could sing in their native language, they could dance to their native songs, and it was so fun because everyone was like, wow, we're having a cultural experience here because we're being introduced to different cultures. I had a lot of Japanese students who were introduced to Brazilian students' music and, and also Italian songs as well. So it was just a really, really fun time for everyone. So yeah, having activities where students are allowed to get together, like doing stuff like that, it's actually really fun for them, and they feel like the assimilation is more easier on them. Another thing I wanted to add on Anna's experience or her response as well is that when you introduce the students to be aware of the culture shock, most times if it's their first time traveling, they don't know that they're going to experience a culture shock. So you have to tell them, like, maybe you could make a support group. You can say, make friends in this class. I might offer after school hours for you guys if you ever want to come in and talk or stuff and so. You can tell them, if you ever experience this stuff, come talk to me or talk to your classmate. I encourage you, when you feel lonely, I encourage you to go out, you know, like you don't have to spend money. You can go to a park with a friend. You can just take time for yourself or take a mental day for yourself and don't come to school. Just stay home, you know. You got to let yourself process these emotions, because coming here to America it's exciting, but it is nerve-wracking because you're going into a very, very different culture from the one you're used to, you know? So just offering support, giving them an opportunity to have fun and be introduced to other cultures as well. Those are things that I've saw that actually worked in assimilation. So yeah, those are my experiences.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. But yeah, if you ever have your classrooms in the future, so like Anna and Norman, if you guys host your own classes or you get into a university or school, doing stuff like that can actually, it means a lot to the student. That's what I've kind of noticed.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm gonna take that advice. So basically take a culture, an American culture, and basically turn it into a game.
Make it
I
into
would
an
do that,
activity.
definitely.
Yeah, make it into a report, make it into a PowerPoint. Just say, hey, I'm gonna assign you to do this topic about America. Any specific topic, just say like, oh, talk about Lindy Hop. Here you go. You're assigned to do research on Lindy Hop. How was it introduced? What is it like? Do people still dance it to this day? Where can you go? Stuff like that. And it's great because they do their research and it's not just, you know, random, or it's not just homework that's useless. You know what I mean? Like when you go to school and you're like, this is useless information, but it's needed for school kind of learning. For them, it's more of, it's a treasure hunt. You're actually doing research on things that you may probably go to in person in America. So, or in California in particular. So I think I did that for my students when it came to like amusement parks, and they talked about it for like Halloween Haunt and stuff, like what's Knott's Berry Farm Halloween Haunt about, what's Disneyland's Halloween Haunt about, or what's Universal's. And then everyone took turns in class presenting it to each other, and it worked. My students actually went to them too. So it's a fun activity for them to educate themselves on what they learn in class and applying it to their PowerPoints, and then actually going to there and experiencing it firsthand too. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. So do that. Okay, moving on to the next question. I'm sorry, I went off topic a lot. Let's address a difficult topic. Do you think ethnic profiling still exists? How do people confront these issues in America? So who'd like to go first and address this hard topic?
I can go first.
Go ahead, Norman.
Like, unfortunately, it still exists today. I think it's the reason that it still exists. It's because people, there are still some people who are not. Hold on, let's see. Like they still like think that this is some type of group of people because they have the shape of their face, how tall they are, how dark their skin they are. It's just that, and the worst thing about that is that when you associate them with those kind of features, you also like give them character as well, that they are rude or they're nice, they're smart, they study a lot, that kind of thing. There's I don't know, to be honest, I don't know how to confront the issue. I think the way to do it is be just to be educated, like know what just like to be educated basically. This is a difficult topic, not gonna lie. However, I know that my uncle unfortunately like kind of like do this too, like he kind of like categorize people, and they would give him characteristic, and that, not gonna lie, that kind of sometimes it makes me uncomfortable, because like, it doesn't go that way. Not all people are this, not all people are like that. um yeah, this is a very difficult topic, I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very fair. I also agree with you regarding the ethnic profiling. But before I give my answer, Anna, did you want to go next?
Sure. I guess I feel like this isn't even really up for debate. I feel like ethnic profiling does exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking like within the educational field, like I've worked in public schools and with different teachers, and to be honest, like you'll be shocked sometimes the things they say or you hear in the classrooms. Like just over the summer I had to work with an older educator, and I was kind of like the tutor helping assigned to help a classroom, and this teacher um said an inappropriate comment. There was this student who was dressed kind of like your normal. It gets kind of hard because um, within the Hispanic community, the cholo wardrobe is kind of like a staple look.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you dress like that doesn't necessarily mean you are a cholo
Mm-hmm.
or gangster related or anything. It's kind of look. You have a white T-shirt, you have your shorts and your socks, and I guess the kid worked in the cafeteria serving lunch, and for that he has to wear a fishnet on his
Right.
head. So this student comes into the classroom with the fishnet because he was running late from because the class had just come from snack, and I guess he didn't bother to take it off. He just left it on, which isn't a big issue. But I guess the teacher took offense to that because of how he was dressed that day. Normally he wouldn't dress like um I want to say like cholo looking. Normally he would have like baggy pants and a white t-shirt, but I guess socks weren't showing that day. I guess socks were showing that day. And then he had the fishnet, and I guess in the olden times gangsters used to wear that too. So she was like, she went up to him during a discussion at the beginning of the class and was like, I just need to say that I feel totally offended by what you're wearing. And in my mind I was like, did she just say that? And she was like,
No.
from where I come,
Offended?
offended.
Damn.
And she was like, where
Wow, oh my God, I don't understand.
where I come from, she's from Torrance. She was like, this relates to a different kind of gangster lifestyle. And she was like, and I'm worried for you and I feel threatened. And I was just like, what is this lady trying to get at? And I turned around and I was like,
Oh my
he
God.
works at the cafeteria. I was like, he just has the fishnet. I was like, I don't think it's anything like that. And then I guess she saw that I was like talking, like advocating for him. And then she kind of like stepped back and she was like, oh, okay. And then later on, I had to talk to her because it was like, it was so out of line. Like, it was completely out of line.
Wait,
And
so
it's crazy to think that these kinds of things still exist, but honestly, you constantly, when you work in the education field for so long, you're gonna see these people and you're gonna be like, what are you doing in this field? Yeah. The good thing is that she understood and that she grew from it. It's not like she was like, no, she wasn't anything. She listened. She was like, oh, okay, I didn't think it was that offensive. I learned from it. She addressed it in class, and then she moved on, which is good.
That's good.
It's a good sign of growth, but yeah. Does it exist in America?
It's a good thing that she grown to it.
Yeah, and that's what is good. Yeah, some educators don't, some do, and the one I was talking to did. So I'm grateful for that.
I'm glad for that too. That's great. So you spoke
and I think it's more like an emotional damage.
What was that? Sorry.
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Hannah.
Norman just said it was an emotional damage. I said, so you spoke to her after. Were you just educating her on that?
I think she kind of realized when I advocated that she might have done something wrong. So she kind of, at the end, we have our lunch together there in the classroom. And we kind of started talking about it. And I told her that, basically about racial profiling. Because here in Hawaiian Gardens, which is the city next to mine, there used to be gang injunctions. And they say if you walk like a duck, then you are a duck. Meaning if you dress like a gangster, you are a gangster. And the cops had the right to frisk you and pat you down and stuff like that, even though you didn't do anything or anything. So I told her about that, and I told her sometimes when I wear hoop earrings, people say I'm a chola, despite me not like having anything else to do with it apart from being Mexican and having hoop earrings. They naturally assume I am. So it's like I explained to her that certain outfits and wardrobes, although you associate it from your community that way, they're kind of like staple things related to our culture, not necessarily just because one part of the group are gangsters doesn't mean that all of them are, just because they dress like that. Yes. And I think that's, yeah. I kind of explained that to her, and she was like, oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I see. No, that's good. Good on you, girl, standing up, advocating. I love that. And I love it when teachers actually address issues like that, because it shows, like you said, growth. That's the most we can hope for from a teacher. Hopefully, even in modern day, if students ever feel like they want to educate a teacher, go do so, because we're limited, you know? Like, sometimes we don't have access to certain updates on life or media, and sometimes, like, we need to be told, you know, we're willing to learn, and I hope teachers are still I can't even talk. I hope that teachers are still willing to learn, even from their students, because I feel like my experience as a teacher is I always learn from my students, you know? They learn from me, but I learn from them. So it's like...
Goes back and forth.
Yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship, you know, like no matter what, we're gonna keep learning from each other. So if a teacher closes that door from learning, and if they didn't apologize and address it, then I would see it as a sign of, like, to me it shows like immaturity, pride in a way, because, you know, I know, like, in the Philippines, for example, I've heard stories, I haven't been there firsthand, but teachers are so prideful in the Philippines. And I've heard stories where, like, my cousin corrected a teacher, and the teacher was upset and asked for a parent conference, and my cousin was like,
damn, really?
Yeah, because my cousin, he's smart, like really, really smart, and he basically told the teacher, he's like, that's the wrong answer, and the teacher was like, no, it's not, I'm the teacher here. And then he was like, if you know it so well, why don't you go teach the class? So my cousin taught the class, and he was right. And then to take it a step further, the teacher actually requested for a parent conference, and their parent came, and then he was also in the room, and the parent was like, why are you calling me when my son is right? Like basically my cousin's dad, or I'll just say it, my cousin's dad basically told him off. He was like, well, if my son's right, then he's right. Like, you're an educator, you're a teacher. What's wrong with being corrected? You know, people are, you know, teachers are human. Sometimes we have errors. So if your student is wrong, you're gonna embarrass them for being right? You know, like, he called him out like that. And ever since then, anytime my cousin corrected, the teacher would just, not anymore. I was just, yeah. And it's just like, you know, it's just a reflection of pride, you know? And I don't like that about teachers, and I feel like a lot of students see that relationship with a lot of teachers, because, you know, teachers in a lot of countries can be perceived as the authoritarian in the classroom, so what they say goes, even if they're wrong, you know? So I think it's really important that the students are aware that, you know, it's okay if the teacher's wrong, let them know. Let the teacher think about it, let it simmer, and then the teacher, when they're ready, they'll address it in class, you know? So I love that your teacher definitely, like, took accountability for it, because I'm gonna be honest, we live in this world is very judgmental. That's all I'm gonna say. This world is judgmental no matter what. Yeah. Even if you say, I'm not the judgmental type, yeah, you don't have to say it out loud, you think about it, you know? We're all judgmental, in a way. More so than others, unfortunately.
Mm.
So to answer the question about ethnic profiling, I agree with both Norman and Anna that it is relevant. It's still up, and it's a current and still an ongoing problem to this day. And it's just like what Norman said, is that we think of people depending on their ethnic group. There's a character, there's a, like, what's the word for it? I wanted to say status quo, but I can't remember what the right word was. There's what the media perceives the person is usually how we create those characters, right, in our head about certain cultures. Just like also what Anna said, like just seeing people dress a certain way, you assume that they are that. And I'm gonna be honest, I probably thought that way too when I saw certain Hispanic Latina women wearing, dressing up like a chola. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, she's a chola. But it could also be just a fashion statement, you don't have to be part of the group. You could just admire it and you want a piece of that, I remember I also went through my own phase of, like, when I dressed up, people would say, you dress like Asian baby girl. And I don't act like an Asian baby girl, because, like, it was all about, I think it was just, like, wearing the wingtip, looking cutesy, or dressing a little bit, like, sexy. And I'm just like, I just like the style. I'm not part of that group. Like, don't associate me to them, So there are people who just like the fashion or, like the look. So in a way to address these issues, it's like what Norman said, educating people, Anna too, advocating for these awareness for people as well. I think another way that we commonly receive our education is through social media. So I know one of the things that they did in terms of confronting these issues are jokes, for sure. I know there's a lot of stand-up comedies that talk about the bad things about, like, for example, like Jokoi for Filipino culture, talking about the getting spanked or getting trauma. He makes it into a joke, and I think a lot of the times how we handle these issues are like we just laugh about it, making a joke out of problems. In a way, it's awareness, but also starting a conversation to educate people. So I think this is one of the most popular ways of how we address these issues, is that through media, through entertainment, we create conversation that way. Yeah. Okay. I think are we almost done with? Yeah, we finished our podcast. Oh my God, we did it, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So thoughts, final thoughts, you guys. How did you enjoy our very first live stream? Or did I say live stream? Live stream podcast. What do you guys think?
I enjoyed it.
This is a good thing. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and you guys created awesome answers, and I'm really glad that I got to spend my first time with you guys. It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course. And
Well, yeah, thank you for having us.
thank you for making time for me. I don't know if we could try to do this as a weekly thing, because I know your guys' schedule is kind of packed. So it also depends as well. But yeah, I'm gonna try and do this maybe every other week. Maybe? Is it possible for you guys? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, again, my
can try.
schedule's sporadic. Like, if I have time, like right now, then I would definitely do it. But like, if I have a student or if I'm busy at that day, I can't, unfortunately.
And that makes sense because, I mean, as adults, our schedules are sporadic. Sometimes we can't cater to having a good schedule, especially when you're a tutor, right? Drop-in tutor. Yeah. It kind of sucks.
And especially that we live in Los Angeles, like, everyone's busy, unfortunately.
Yes.
And like, when you find a time that you're not busy, you take advantage of that by sitting on a couch or just like lay down in bed and do nothing, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Or like we just, mental health day or something. I don't know. Which is it's never a bad thing for sure. So yeah, I think that's about it. I definitely enjoyed
I'm really
today's
happy though
conversation.
that yeah, I'm really happy that we have this conversation just to address like some of the issues that we face as a person who grew up into culture, basically, and how we manage those cultures, basically. I enjoy that.
Yeah, me too. Because like again, like I I didn't expect that we would have like different answers. Like definitely Anna's answer about assimilation started from the home surprised me, because I usually thought it was, you know, when you leave the house, that's when it starts. I didn't expect it to start from the house first.
Oh, that is true.
But it's also interesting because Anna is, I think you're the second youngest, right? Or third? In your family?
Third.
Yeah, you're the third youngest. So basically,
Or third oldest, fourth youngest.
fourth youngest. My bad. Yes. But yeah, having that extra experience of being a younger sibling kind of changes your experiences for it too. Because I'm the oldest sibling in my family. So that's why.
You're the ate?
Yeah, I'm the ate. My sister is my younger sister, so as a result of that, like, I'm the guinea pig. I experience everything firsthand. So that's my experience. It's just like I'm the first one to go, so I'm gonna experience life first, and then my sister later after me. Yeah. But yeah, today's stream was a little bit scuffed. I apologize for that. We'll definitely work more tinkers and all this jazz with how I should fashion this. Do you guys think this format is okay, or should I move it around? Like, I should ask for your opinions on it.
Oh, what do you mean?
Like, initially I had your videos on the left side of the screen. That's why there's a lot of space over there, but Discord's so janky.
Okay, I see it, yeah.
Yeah, Discord is so janky that every time I preset your video, sometimes your videos disappear and I have to reset it all over again. And I'm just like, I don't trust Discord anymore. I'm just gonna keep it like this window from now on. I'm probably gonna rearrange stuff. So, yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll definitely work on that, but thank you for coming in today, Anna and Norman. Do you have any last words before I end today's stream?
Other than thank
Last
you.
words.
And
Yeah, thank you.
yeah.
All right, then I'll see you guys in the next stream. So guys, if you'd like to join us again, I will make an announcement on Discord. So join the Discord server. It's all in the description. So just open that and then you'll find the join link. I will try my best to post about it on Instagram. I'm really slow at that. But everything is mostly through the Discord server. So yeah, English learners, if you'd like to have these kind of conversation or podcasts, consider subscribing to my Ko-Fi. So link in the description as well. Then I will see you guys. So have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and see you next time.
Good night.
Yeah, good morning, good night, good evening. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.